Baby Tyrannosaurus Rex, what? Yes, indeed. It's finally happened. A baby T-Rex has been found. Now, it's one bone, but thank goodness, it's an extremely diagnostic bone. So we're very confident, well, at least these authors are very confident that what they have is a Tyrannosaurus Rex. And when I say baby, we're talking 6 months or less old. Very young. And then they found another one of these bones, these third metatarsals, from a Gorgosaurus. And it has a bit different morphology, but it matches adult morphology. And it was even younger, right at the embryonic in the egg versus out of the egg. But they used a mighty synchrotron to see that it too had the bone showing the bone cells are pulled because of the ligaments. Pretty clever stuff. So let's dig into the paper. This is the distal part of a metatarsal 3, the middle arctometatarsallian bone in a T-Rex foot. So this bone, to put it in perspective, is really, really, really tiny. And it is, I can't believe it was even found. So the lead author found it, Nick Longrich, while he was looking through drawers. Nick decided that he was going to go look for small critters, and sure enough, he found a bunch of interesting beasts. And he found teeth. This little tiny tooth here, this jaw has been known, other small teeth with wear facets, and even potentially nanotyrannid teeth. So they're out there. We just were looking in the wrong spots. And these were in drawers, collected, thankfully, by very careful paleontologists who are not, like me, just looking for the big sauropods. Now, if we dig into the paper a bit more, it was, well, I was very skeptical, as everyone should be. I mean, a fragment of bone. But once I read through it and saw, okay, they make a pretty convincing argument why this is Tyrannosaur. They then took another leap. And they said, well, how big was it? And they worked on, Eric Snively, the last author on there, is one of the greatest guys around in terms of working on Tyrannosaur and math, using projections of size and of biomechanics. Amazingly bright man. We have a video of his, in fact, that you can watch, and where I've interviewed him about this paper. So as we went through and looked at the math, there's a lot of math in this paper. They come up with this about, 6 pounds, 2.5 kilograms. So the size of a house cat. And here's a drawing Nick did to show the house cat versus the small Tyrannosaurus. Now, this one they figured is roughly 3 to 6 months old. It didn't have any lags. They couldn't find out, so it didn't live a year, a full cycle. But how do they know it was a juvenile and not some other small dinosaur? Well, they used a synchrotron. Now, people that use micro CT scanners or CT scanners, I think they're cool, but this is a beamline. This is next level amazing. And the paper is some of the most beautiful illustrations of histology I have ever seen. Look at this incredible, incredible work. I mean, this reminds me of the Pillars of the Gods, that famous NASA picture out in space, in the galaxy. And what they realized as they looked at it was they could see the directions the ligaments were pulling. And they could spot these differences within the bone itself to show that if this was just laying in an egg, if this was an embryonic, and occasionally it dreams and kicks its leg, you won't see this level of muscle pull. But when you see the fibers getting denser on the outside here, that's a sign that this was an animal that was doing something. And they unite that with these teeth. The teeth have wear facets. They're really tiny teeth, but they are hitting bone. They're biting something sharp. These aren't your typical insectivores. I mean, I'm sure they wouldn't turn one away, but their hypothesis is these little beasts were eating bony creatures and chipping their teeth like they would do throughout their lives. And speaking of teeth, they found the morphologies. They found all these tiny morphologies here that are Tyrannosaurus morphologies, or Tyrannosaurid, and then they found this morphology, which is different, and they argue it's nanotyrannus. I loved the visuals, like the denticles on this tooth here. Spectacular. Really cool. So they have the little bottom end of the foot. They can now tell roughly how big the egg could be because they can guesstimate the size of an actual embryo, and then they can tuck it all up, and they have it wrapped around, and now they have an egg, and the egg's roughly 2 liters, which is crazy because that is smaller than the elephant bird egg and the moa eggs. These giant extinct birds laid much larger eggs than the Tyrannosaurus, even though the Tyrannosaurus grew to be orders of magnitude heavier, taller, longer. Now they looked at the size of the egg and they said, you know what? we can probably guesstimate the size of the clutch of the eggs based on how many eggs could possibly fit in a Tyrannosaurus. So they did some more math, and they hypothesized that T-Rexes were laying between 30 and 70 or so eggs in a nest. And that allowed them to then make another observation. Many of you have heard of R-type and K-type selection. The R-type selection is the lay 100 eggs at once and hope for the best. Sea turtles are R-type, classics. Crocodiles lay lots of eggs. K-type selection is what we do, what elephants and whales do. A kiwi, they lay one egg. We have a couple of kids, and elephants raise one elephant and stick with it for many years before having another one. The strategy is you either invest in lots of offspring on the front end and hope for the best, or you invest in very few offspring and take great care of them. Well, this doesn't fall on either side, so they're doing something in the middle. And while they were putting together these charts to look at what animals were doing in the R and K side, they realized something else. Across time, in their opinion, it seemed to be that there's a shift towards K and not so much R in numerous clades, in insects, in dinosaurs, in various other reptiles, and even mammals to a certain extent. So they get speculative at the end, but their speculations are layered with things that make some sense. So I really enjoyed this paper. The little Gorgosaurus they found was smaller than the Tyrannosaurus, I should mention that, and was younger. And so they hypothesized that this is right on the cusp of embryo versus walking around. But again, using their mighty synchrotron, they could show the bone being pulled in directions by ligaments. They had a really cool egg chart that just comparative eggs of animals, which I thought was pretty cool. I'm sure they'll catch some flack for how did they know this is Tyrannosaurus and Gorgosaurus, but to me, the characters, they seem pretty reasonable. And the nanotyrannus teeth, well, they're different than these other teeth for sure. And we know nanotyrannus is a taxon that's legit wandering around. I've been saying that for years. You've seen it on my videos. It's nice to be justified there. Woo woo. As for another area, estimating the size of the clutch based on animals that are orders of magnitude larger than those are today. The way they justified it was using crocodiles and phylogenetic bracketed them versus birds. And they also pointed out something interesting, which was and I didn't think about this, but the birds that are helpless, you know, that classic robin sitting there tweeting, those are the neo-aves. The more basal birds, like quail, they just pop and run. So I didn't think about how it almost as if it is altricialness was evolved over time in the bird line, and the default is more of these precocial get up and runs. I thought that was cool. And I don't know much about cones and secondary remodeling, so I'm going to defer there. I'm sure that there's some questions that can be asked in the specifics, because what I learned on a histo paper I was involved in was there's a lot of opinionated histologists, and they're not wrong. It's just exciting to see them go back and forth, and candidly, I miss a lot of their words, but I enjoy the conversation. And the R and K type through time, it was more on the speculative line, but even that, they use bracketing in the paper. I didn't do it justice in digging it out on this video. Strongly recommend you read the paper, but make sure that you've got their charts that you can refer back to and their graphs, because it makes it, though, that much easier. My name is Dr. Brian Curtis with Fossil Crate, saying thank you kindly. Adios.